The fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects above the emergency room floor. Dr. Arya Hawkins pressed 2 fingers against her temple, trying to will away the migraine that had been building for the past 6 hours. Her scrubs clung to her skin, damp with sweat and God knows what else. The clock on the wall mocked her. 2:47 a.m. Then the doors exploded open. Not literally, but the force behind them might as well have detonated a bomb. 6 men in black suits flooded the ER like a dark tide, parting around a 7th figure who carried a frail, elderly woman in his arms. The woman's face was twisted in agony, her breathing shallow and rapid. But it wasn't the woman who made every nurse freeze mid-step. It was him. Yang Wanek moved through the chaos with the kind of presence that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it, took it, owned it. His suit was expensive, tailored to perfection, but his eyes were the kind that had seen things, done things that would make most people look away. Arya didn't look away. "My mother," he said, his voice cutting through the ambient noise like a knife. "She needs help, right now." Arya's training kicked in before her brain could process the danger radiating off this man like heat from asphalt in summer. She moved forward, gesturing to an empty bay. "Bring her here." "What are her symptoms?" "Severe abdominal pain. Started 2 hours ago and it is getting worse." His accent carried traces of Korean, smooth and precise. As he laid his mother down with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him, Arya caught sight of something. Tattoos. They crept up from his collar, intricate patterns that spoke of affiliations she probably didn't want to know about. "Everyone else out," she said to his entourage. "You can stay." She pointed at Yang. "Family only." The men in suits looked at Yang. He gave the smallest nod, and they evaporated like smoke. "What's her name?" Arya was already checking vitals, her hands steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. "Mrs. Yang. She's 72. Has a history of gallstones." "Bingo." Arya pressed gently on the woman's upper right abdomen. The elderly woman cried out, and Yang's hand shot out, gripping the bed rail so hard his knuckles went white. "Acute cholecystitis," Arya murmured. "Possibly with complications. We need imaging immediately and surgical consult." She turned to Kate, the charge nurse who had appeared at her elbow. "Get me a CT with contrast and page Dr. Morrison. Tell him it's urgent." Kate's eyes flickered to Yang, then back to Arya. "Doctor, are you sure you want to?" "Now, Kate." The next hour blurred into controlled chaos. Arya started in 4-line, administered morphine for the pain, and coordinated with radiology while Yang stood in the corner of the bay like a statue carved from stone. He watched everything, missed nothing. When the imaging came back, Arya's suspicions were confirmed. Severe inflammation, possible perforation. This needed surgery within the hour. She approached Yang carefully, the way someone might approach a caged predator. "Your mother needs emergency surgery. Her gallbladder is severely inflamed, and if we don't operate soon, it could rupture, and that would be life-threatening." Something flickered across his face. Fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. It humanized him in a way that made Arya's chest tighten. "Do whatever you need to do," he said quietly. "Whatever it costs. Mr. Yang, this isn't about money. This is about... Everything is about money, Dr. Hawkins." He glanced at her name badge. "But in this case, it's also about my mother's life. So please, do whatever you need to do." Before you continue, if you're loving this story so far, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me, would you risk everything for someone you just met? Dr. Morrison arrived 15 minutes later, a gruff man in his 50s with steady hands and an excellent track record. After reviewing the scans, he agreed. This case indeed needs surgery. Immediately, they prepped Mrs. Yang for transport, and Arya found herself standing beside Yang in the hallway as they wheeled his mother toward the surgical wing. "She'll be okay," Arya said. She shouldn't have said it. Never promise outcomes. But something about the way his jaw was clenched, the way his hands were buried deep in his pockets to hide their trembling, made her want to offer comfort. He looked at her then. "You can't promise that." "No," she admitted. "But Dr. Morrison is the best. And your mother is strong. I can see it in her." "She raised me alone," Yang said. His voice so low Arya had to lean closer to hear. Worked 3 jobs. Never complained. She's the strongest person I know. Then he walked away, following his mother's gurney until he couldn't go any further. Arya should have gone back to the ER. Should have checked on her other patients. Instead, she found herself in the surgical waiting room at 4 a.m., holding 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. Yang was alone. His men were nowhere to be seen. He sat in a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, head bowed. In the harsh fluorescent light, he looked exhausted, almost vulnerable. Coffee? Arya offered. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features before he masked it. You didn't have to. I know. She sat down 2 chairs away, leaving space between them. But I did anyway. They sat in silence. The coffee was terrible, but Yang drank it anyway. Why medicine? He asked suddenly. Arya blinked. What? Why did you become a doctor? This brutal work. Long hours and terrible pay considering the debt that comes from student loan. Why? She considered lying or giving him the standard answer about wanting to help people. Instead, she told him the truth. My brother died when I was 16. He had an asthma attack. We couldn't afford his medication that month. I was with him when he died, and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't save him. So I decided I'd learn how to save people. All the people that cross my path. Yang was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she couldn't quite identify. That's noble. It's expensive, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. Student loans that'll take me 30 years to pay off. But yeah, it matters. Debt is its own kind of prison, Yang agreed softly. Before she could ask what he meant, Dr. Morrison pushed through the surgical doors, pulling off his cap. Both Yang and Arya shot to their feet. Surgery went well, Morrison said, and Yang's entire body seemed to deflate with relief. We removed the gallbladder laparoscopic. There was some infection, so we'll need to keep her on 4 antibiotics for a few days, but she should make a full recovery. Yang's eyes closed briefly. Thank you, he said, and those 2 words carried more emotion than entire speeches. You can see her in about an hour, once she's out of recovery, Morrison continued. Then he glanced at Arya with a knowing look. Dr. Hawkins, your shift ended 2 hours ago. Had it? Arya checked her watch. 5:30 a.m. The sun would be rising soon. I'll walk you out, Yang said. It wasn't a question, but Arya found herself nodding anyway. The parking garage was empty except for their footsteps echoing off concrete. Arya's car was on the 3rd level, a beat-up Honda that had seen better days. Yang walked beside her, his presence somehow both comforting and unnerving. Dr. Hawkins, he said as they reached her car. Arya, she corrected. At this hour, we can skip the formalities. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Arya, thank you for taking care of my mother. And for the coffee. You're welcome, Mr. Yang. Wanak, he said. Or Wansuk if you prefer the Korean pronunciation. At this hour, we can skip the formalities, he said, imitating her. This time, Arya did smile. Good night, Wanak. Good night, Arya. She should have driven away then. Should have gone home, showered, and collapsed into bed. Instead, she sat in her car and watched him walk back toward the hospital entrance, his figure eventually swallowed by shadows and fluorescent light. Something told her this meetup wasn't over. The next evening, Arya was checking charts at the nurse's station when Kate tapped her shoulder. Doctor? There's someone here to see you. Arya looked up and nearly dropped her tablet. Yang stood at the entrance to the ER, impossibly out of place in his tailored suit, holding a bag of what smelled like Korean food and a bouquet of flowers. Every eye in the ER was on him, but he only looked at her. Can we talk? He asked. Arya glanced at the clock. Her break was in 10 minutes. Give me a moment. They ended up on the hospital roof, an unofficial break spot that most staff didn't know about. The Chicago skyline stretched out before them, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Yang set the food down on a bench, unpacking containers of kimchi, bulgogi, and rice. I wanted to thank you properly, he said, for everything you did for my mother. You already thanked me, Arya pointed out, but she was eyeing the food with interest. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. That was a thank you from a son to a doctor. This is a thank you from me to you. The distinction seemed important to him, so Arya nodded. How is your mother? Better. Complaining about the hospital food, which the nurses tell me is a good sign. That almost smile appeared again. She also asked about you. The pretty doctor who held my hand. Arya felt heat creep up her neck. I didn't hold your hand. Metaphorically speaking. He handed her a pair of chopsticks. Eat. You look like you haven't slept in days. Pot. Meat kettle. She mocked. This time, he did smile and it transformed his face, softened the hard edges, and made him look younger, even approachable, but still dangerous in an entirely different way. They ate in companionable silence, watching the city breathe below them. Finally, Yang spoke. I need to be honest with you about something. Arya's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. Okay. You seem like a smart woman, Arya. So I'm sure you've guessed that I'm not in a conventional line of work. The suits and the tattoos were subtle hints, she said dryly. I'm not a good man, Yang continued, his voice careful. I've done things I can't take back. Things that would probably make you look at me differently. Why are you telling me this? He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Because I'd like to see you again, outside of a hospital. And you deserve to know what you'd be getting into. Arya should have said no. She should have run in the opposite direction. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm off Friday night. Now it's your turn to share. Have you ever felt drawn to someone you knew you shouldn't be? Drop your story in the comments below and don't forget to like this video. Let's build this community together. Friday night, Yang picked her up in a car that probably cost more than her annual salary. He took her to a small Korean restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood she'd never been to, where the owner greeted him like family and didn't bat an eye at the two guards who positioned themselves at a corner table. So tell me about yourself, Arya said once they'd ordered. Beyond the ominous warnings, Yang leaned back considering. I'm 36. I like old movies and terrible coffee. I've been running my organization for 8 years. And I've been trying to get my mother to retire and move somewhere warm for the past 5. Why doesn't she? Because she says Chicago is her home. And she doesn't want to leave me. He said it with a mixture of frustration and fondness. What about you? Arya pressed. If you could be anywhere, doing anything, what would it be? No one had ever asked him that. She could see it in the way his eyes widened slightly, the way he went still. I don't know. I've never thought about it. Think about it now. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. Somewhere quiet, he finally said. By the ocean, maybe. Running a restaurant or a bookshop. Something simple. Normal. That doesn't sound impossible. For someone like me? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Arya, men in my position don't get retirement plans and quiet lives by the ocean. We get buried or imprisoned. That's a choice though, isn't it? She wasn't sure why she was pushing this. To stay or to leave. It's more complicated than that. Everything worth doing is complicated. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Yang would show up at the hospital with food, and they'd steal moments on the roof between her shifts. Sometimes they talked about everything. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. He told her about growing up poor in Seoul, about immigrating to Chicago with his mother when he was 12, about the circumstances that led him down this path. She told him about her brother, about the crushing weight of medical school debt, about the patients she couldn't save and the ones she could. It wasn't perfect. His phone would ring at odd hours, and his face would go cold and hard. She'd get paged for emergencies and disappear for hours. But somehow they made it work. 3 weeks after their first date, Yang kissed her on that hospital rooftop under a sky full of stars and city lights. His hands were gentle as they cupped her face. His lips soft despite the hardness everywhere else about him. I'm dangerous to my enemies, he whispered against her mouth. But I would never hurt you, Arya. That's a promise. She believed him. 3 days later, she learned what his danger really meant. Arya was in the middle of suturing a laceration when her phone buzzed. A text from Yang. Just 3 words. Stay away tonight. Her stomach dropped. She tried calling, but it went to voicemail. So she texted back and got no response. By the time her shift ended at midnight, her anxiety had morphed into full-blown fear. She drove to Yang's penthouse apartment, the address he'd given her 2 weeks ago with the instruction to only use it in emergencies. This felt like an emergency. The lobby was empty. Too empty. The doorman who usually stood guard was nowhere to be seen. Every instinct Arya had screamed at her to turn around, but she pressed the elevator button anyway. The ride up to the top floor felt like descending into hell rather than ascending toward the sky. The elevator doors opened directly into Yang's penthouse. The first thing she saw was blood on the marble floor. The second thing was June, Yang's second-in-command, standing guard with a gun in his hand. "Dr. Hawkins," June said, his usual professional demeanor cracking around the edges. "You shouldn't be here. Where is he? He told me to keep you away if you came. Where is he?" June hesitated, then stepped aside. She found Yang in his living room, pacing like a caged animal. His knuckles were bruised and bloody. His shirt was torn, but he was alive. "I told you to stay away," he said without turning around. "What happened? What always happens in my world? Someone made a move. We responded." He finally faced her, and the look in his eyes was wild, desperate. "This is what I am, Arya. This is my life. Blood and violence and constant threats. Is this what you want?" "Don't do that," she said sharply. "Don't push me away because you're scared." "Scared?" He laughed harshly. "There was an attack tonight on the hospital where my mother is recovering. They used her to get to me. Do you understand? They will use anyone close to me, anyone I care about." The implication hung between them like a blade. "Your mother," Arya whispered. "Is she?" "She's fine. I had her moved to a secure facility within an hour." "But Arya," he crossed the room, gripping her shoulders. "They will come for you next. They will hurt you to hurt me. I can't. I won't let that happen." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying this was a mistake. All of it. You need to go back to your life, and I need to stay in mine." Arya felt something crack inside her chest. "You're breaking up with me. I'm protecting you. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty." Her voice rose. "You think I didn't know this could happen? You think I'm naive enough to believe dating you would be safe? I made my choice, Yang. Don't take it away from me." "This isn't a choice," he said roughly. "This is me telling you that I care about you too much to watch you get hurt because of me. That's bullshit and you know it." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "The question is, are you trying to be better or are you content being the monster everyone expects?" He flinched like she'd slapped him. "That's what I thought," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. The elevator doors closed on his devastated face. 2 weeks passed without communication. Arya threw herself into work, pulling double shifts until she was too exhausted to feel anything. Her best friend Gracie finally cornered her in the break room. "Okay, enough," Gracie said, physically blocking the door. "You look like death, you're snapping at everyone, and I know it's about that man. So spill." Arya broke. The whole story poured out, from that first night in the ER to Yang's penthouse to the way he'd pushed her away. Gracie listened without interrupting. When Arya finally finished, her friend said simply, "Do you love him?" "What?" "It's a simple question, Arya. Do you love him?" Yes, I think I do." "Then fight for him," Gracie said fiercely. "Look, I know it's complicated and dangerous and probably insane, but you've spent your whole life playing it safe, following the rules, doing what you're supposed to do. When was the last time you took a risk on something that actually mattered?" Arya couldn't answer that. "Life is short," Gracie continued. "Your brother taught you that. So if you love this man, if he makes you happy, then fight for him. Make him see that you're strong enough to handle his world." Before we get to what happens next, can we take a second to appreciate how real love requires courage? If this story is hitting different, make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on. You're part of the Afro-Korean lore family now, and we don't miss uploads. That night, Arya showed up at Yang's penthouse again. This time, June let her through without a word. Yang was on his balcony, staring out at the city. He didn't turn around when she approached, but she knew he heard her. "I love you," she said simply. "I know it's too soon and too fast and too complicated. I know your world is dangerous and that being with you puts a target on my back. I know all of that, but I'm here anyway." His shoulders tensed. "Arya, I'm not done," she interrupted. "You asked me once why I became a doctor. I told you about my brother, about wanting to save people. But there's more to it than that. I became a doctor because I was tired of being helpless. Tired of watching people I love suffer while I could do nothing. So I learned. I trained. I became someone who could help." She moved closer until she was standing right behind him. "You think I can't handle your world? I work in an ER, Yang. I see violence and death and people at their worst every single day. I know darkness. And I know that even in the darkest places, there can be light. There can be hope." Finally, he turned. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. "What if I can't protect you? What if you don't have to?" she challenged. "What if instead of protecting me, you just, I don't know, trust me? Trust that I'm strong enough, smart enough, brave enough to stand beside you, not behind you. They could kill you. I could die in a car accident tomorrow, or get sick, or have a patient's family member decide I didn't do enough and come after me. Life is risk, Yang. The question is it worth it?" He cupped her face with those bruised hands, his touch impossibly gentle. "You're worth everything," he whispered. "You're worth the world. That's why I'm terrified." "Then be terrified with me," she said. "Not without me." He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't deserve you." "Maybe not," she agreed with a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway. You're insane." "Probably. Is that a yes?" "That's a let's take this one day at a time and see if we can make it work." He pulled back slightly, his expression serious. "But there are rules. You carry a phone I give you that can't be traced. You tell me where you are. You let June or one of my men watch over you when you're not at the hospital. And if I say run, you run. No questions." "I can live with that," Arya said. "Can you live with me knowing everything? No more secrets about your work or your world." He considered this. "That could be dangerous. More dangerous than me loving you and not understanding the threats?" "Fair point." He sighed. "Okay. Full transparency. Within reason." "Within reason," she echoed. They sealed the agreement with another kiss, softer this time. When they finally went inside, Yang wrapped her in his arms on the couch, and for the first time in 2 weeks, Arya felt like she could breathe. "Tell me something," she murmured against his chest. "Something you've never told anyone else." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I'm scared. All the time. Scared of losing control. Scared of becoming my father. He was a violent man who hurt my mother, hurt me. I swore I'd never be like him. But this life, it requires violence. And sometimes I wonder if there's any difference between him and me." Arya tilted her head up to look at him. "The difference is that you wonder, that you care. Your father probably never questioned himself, never worried about becoming a monster. The fact that you do means you're not one. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you don't have enough faith in yourself." She traced the tattoo that crept up his neck. "Maybe it's time you let someone see yours." "My what?" "Your vulnerability. Your fear. Your hope for something better. You've seen mine. Let me see yours." So he did. Through the night, they talked about everything and nothing. His dreams of that quiet life by the ocean. Her hope of one day opening a free clinic. The scars they both carried. The future they might build together despite all odds. When dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they were still tangled together on the couch, talking in hushed voices like conspirators plotting a revolution. Months later, Arya stood in that same penthouse, now half filled with her belongings, watching Yang teach his mother how to FaceTime him on her new phone. Mrs. Yang had recovered fully from her surgery and had taken an immediate liking to Arya, often telling Yang in Korean that he'd better not screw this up. Arya had started learning Korean. Yang had started going to therapy. They were both trying, in their own ways, to bridge their worlds. It wasn't perfect. There were still late-night emergencies, both medical and criminal. There were still moments of fear, of doubt, of wondering if they were making a terrible mistake. But there were also mornings like this one, with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and laughter filling the space and something that felt remarkably like hope blooming in Arya's chest. "Hey!" Yang said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking," she said, leaning back against him, "about how weird life is. Several months ago, I was drowning in debt and exhaustion. Now I'm living with a man whose world I barely understand. In love in a way I didn't think was possible. Having second thoughts? Not even for a moment." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I'll take dangerous and happy over safe and hollow any day. Even if dangerous means June following you to the grocery store and my mother interrogating you about grandchildren?" Arya laughed. "Even then." He kissed her forehead, her nose, finally her lips. "I love you, Dr. Hawkins. I love you too, Mr. Yang." They stood there in the morning light, two people from completely different worlds who'd found each other in the chaos of an emergency room at 2:47 in the morning. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the right one. Outside, Chicago hummed with life. Inside, they'd created something precious, fragile and worth fighting for. And they would fight, together, because that's what love was, Yang had learned. Not the absence of fear or danger or difficulty, but the choice to face it all with someone by your side. Someone who saw your scars and your strength and loved you for both. Someone who made you believe that even in the darkest corners, there could be light. Someone who made you believe in the possibility of becoming better. Someone who made you believe in love. If you've made it this far, you're officially part of the Afro-Korean lore family. This story of Dr. Arya Hawkins and Yang Wanik proves that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone perfectly imperfect for you. Someone worth the risk. Someone worth the fight. Hit that subscribe button one more time if you haven't already. Click that like button, and tell me in the comments what lesson you're taking from this story. And remember, life is too short for safe and hollow. Choose dangerous and happy. Choose love. Choose courage. I'll see you in the next story.